give everybody a minute here to get settled, get logged in. Missing a few yet. Okay, so it looks like we might be a little bit light today. I'm going to do my best to get through this class, but I'm going to tell you now there's a chance I may not make it. I don't know what's going on. I'm in some pretty severe pain. My back and leg, I don't know if it's a sciatic problem, but there is literally no position that I can get in that is comfortable, and there is nothing I take that seems to have an effect on it. So I'll go as long as we can, and I have an alternative if I can't, but we'll let you know about that when we get there. Let me just double check. Oh, there we go. Looks like Hannah's trying to join, but I think she had problems last week getting bumped out. Looks like she's trying to join from a different device now. There she is. All right, hopefully we won't have anybody getting bumped out. So anyway, we're going to go through obviously the assignments. That'll be the first thing. If nothing else, we'll at least get through that, I hope, so I can give you some feedback on it. Some of you kind of got it. Some of you kind of didn't. So as always, when we look at them, I want you to, kind of fill me in on what your thought process was, what the challenges were that you faced. Some of them I think I can guess, but just kind of give me an idea for, what you were going for and whether or not you think you achieved it. Like I said, a couple of you I think did, a couple of you didn't, and a couple of you confused me. So hopefully we'll figure all that out. Let me get that screen up. Okay. So we're going to go right into these. Carly is up first. Let me just refresh my memory. So we have one image, two images. Okay, so this one's I think pretty obvious. This is your hard light source. You can tell by the shadows created on the right side of the bottles and the fact that it's a little bit, flatter lighting. This one, the shadows obviously are much softer. So I'm guessing that this is just whatever normal room lighting you had to work with. And this is some type of other light.
It's my phone flashlight.
Phone flash, okay. Yeah, so the one thing that, and in this case, I don't know that,
Bless you.
that I would have counseled. So the one thing that let me back up a little bit. The one thing that I mentioned last week, and I've talked about a couple of times, and it's something that I noticed a few of you did, although in this case, it's not that big a deal, but typically when you're using supplemental lighting, whether it's your phone flash or regular flash, a desk lamp, whatever, the image is always going to be a little bit more interesting as you move that light away from the camera. Here it's fairly close, if not, yeah, it's not, yeah, you didn't shoot these with a phone, obviously, I can tell by the file name, but it's very close to the camera, which is why we have the shadows, which are very close to the bottle, but more importantly, we have that highlight that's going up and down the face of the bottle. As you move, you would have noticed if you move that light around away from the camera, that highlight would have changed position, wouldn't have been in the center of the bottle. The shadows would have been further off the bottle though, and that could have been an issue as well, because when you're dealing with a hard light source, you typically, you don't, I don't want to say you don't want to cast shadows in a strange direction. Generally you do actually, but you also need some fill light, the room light or whatever to kind of fill that in a little bit so that you don't, you don't throw the next bottle into shadow, for example. And I think a few of you struggled with that balance between whatever light you were using and whatever the ambient light was. Now, in this case, you didn't. I mean, this is a clear-cut case of a hard light source and a soft light source above it. So that part you definitely got, no problem there at all. And like I said, if you had taken that light further off camera to get rid of that highlight, it possibly could have created some more distracting shadows. But just in general, the only reason I bring it up is that in general, when you use a light like that, if you want to make it a little more interesting, move it away from the camera a little further. So I think we got kind of the same thing here. That looks like your hard light source.
Yes.
And that would be the soft. So again, same kind of deal basically, right? Room light and phone flash.
Yes.
So there's another thing that happens when you do that. Anybody want to tell me what it is?
I think in the left picture, the colors are just a bit cooler, and then it, like in the right picture, it's a lot warmer.
Yeah, and that's it exactly, is that the white balance, depending on how the camera is set. Now, if the camera had been set to auto mode, which I'm assuming it was not, auto as far as white balance and not exposure, it probably would have brought these a little closer together. Or if you had shot both of them, well, the phone flash is going to be a little cooler. So anything other than auto, it probably is going to record differently than the ambient light shot. So you could have gone in, and in processing and tried to adjust the white balance. But again, I don't know if you shot RAW files with your camera or just the JPEGs.
These are just JPEGs, but I did find out that I can do RAW files.
Okay. So that would have solved your problem. And so my recommendation to all of you, any of you who have a camera that is capable of recording RAW file, always shoot a RAW file, because it's going to give you the flexibility to go in, and you could literally have taken these two images, select them, clicked one time on something neutral in one of the images, and they both would have matched perfectly. It's not impossible with a JPEG file, but you don't have the same editing headroom, and you're not going to get quite the same result as you would with the RAW file. But so now going forward, that that even if you shoot RAW, make your adjustments and then export them to JPEGs, that's fine. I mean, that's that there's no sense uploading a RAW file unless it's useful in some way. And I don't think we've actually looked at that process. Tell you what, if I forget, remind me when we get through this part. That would probably be a really good thing to just take a quick look at with the Adobe software, at least, so that you know how to do that. And any other software that you might use will probably have a very similar process as far as getting that RAW file adjusted and then exporting it out to a JPEG. But anyway, as far as the assignment goes, you got it. You got the hard light source, you got the soft light source, and you can see how it changes things. I mean, it really, completely redefines the look of both of these images. There's, a little bit of underexposure, I think, on both of the ones with the phone flash. Yeah, this one
Yeah.
and this one. But again, that's, a technical thing that could be worked out. You could shoot and I don't know what you shot them in, but let's see, probably was not a manual. Yeah, it was manual exposure. So because of the difference in intensity between your phone flash and the room light, you would have to have adjusted, your shutter speed, your f-stop, your ISO, or something to get them back a little bit. The other thing to keep in mind is that I know all of you are working, whatever device you're working on to actually, work on these files or edit or whatever, is more than likely an uncalibrated device. So what happens a lot of times, and when I see a lot of files that look underexposed, it's generally because the device isn't calibrated, and that's just normal for most people's laptops or desktops or whatever. Monitors are designed from the factory to make all your icons look pretty. They're not accurate in any way, shape, or form. And so they kind of tend to over brighten and over saturate everything. So to your eye, it looks really good. And then you see that same image on a calibrated screen. You're like, oh, it didn't look like that on my screen. And it's just because it's not calibrated. But I still think, you probably, even on yours, I think this probably looked a little bit under. Both of the ones with the flash. And so just a little boost in exposure would have taken care of that. So I threw a lot of negatives at you, but the good news is that as far as the assignment is concerned, you got it right. So, good job on that. I'm just always throwing little suggestions and things in that hopefully will help you down the road. All right, Hannah's up next. And again, as we go through these guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to tell me about how, what the challenges were, by all means do that. And we'll go from there. All right, so Hannah, so for these, and I think you may be one of the people that I was talking about earlier. Let me put them, whoops, hang on. Let me put these side by side. That probably, if you did use, and I don't know what you used for a light source, but if you did use a desk lamp or something like that, I'm thinking that probably what happened was the room light was competing with that to such an extent that I see a very, very slight difference in the sharpness of the shadows in the one on the right as opposed to the one on the left. But it's really, really slight. And I'm guessing it's probably because the room light, the ambient light, was a little too bright. Am I on the right track here?
So the first one, there was actually more light in the room, and then the second one, it was just the lamp. So
that's interesting, because usually
yeah,
that would, how far away from your subject was that lamp?
and it was probably at least 3 feet away from it.
Yeah, it's still, and I do see that there is, like I said, a slight difference in the sharpness of that shadow, but it's not as much as I would have expected. Especially back 3 feet, the further away you move that light, the harder it becomes, and the more distinct the shadows are. So I can see that you got it. It just doesn't give us the difference that I was kind of looking for. And I have, for those of you that had this issue, I just did this a few minutes ago, shot this little subject both with, this is just an overhead desk lamp, and then again with just the room lights. This was with the room lights turned off, and then this was a desk lamp turned off and the room lights turned on. So this is kind of what I was expecting to see. In your case, Hannah, the one thing that would not have shown up is the darker background. And the reason is that, remember how we talked about how quickly light falls off, but your subject was so close to the background that there's not enough room there for it to fall off and get darker behind. This little guy's probably got, I'm going to guess 4 or 5 feet behind him before you get to the drapes. And that's why, the exposure is balanced for this desk lamp and everything else, you know, because the light falls off so fast. The desk lamp was literally right overhead, and everything else goes darker, whereas the room light is, you know, just going to fill it out a little bit more. So I'm thinking that, you know, a couple of things happened here. One, subject is a little close to the background for that light to fall off and go a little darker. And the other, with, if the room lights were off for that, I'm really not, can you describe is it just like a normal desk lamp that you used?
It was just a normal desk lamp that I used.
Hmm.
It doesn't bend or anything.
Yeah, it looks like, I don't know, it just looks different to me. It looks like it's actually a softer light source than I would expect
Yeah.
from a desk lamp, and I'm not sure why. Probably what I should have had you guys do, and I may do this going forward, is when you shoot images like this, I might have you do what's called a pullback. And that means shoot one image where you pull the camera back a little bit and show me the whole setup, show me the light, you know, where it was in relationship to the subject and all of that. And it'll help to, you know, help to at least explain or understand what these, you know, any of the issues that you might have, why they happened. But you know, for the letter of the assignment, I do see that there is a sharper shadow. It's just not as defined as I would expect for the way you did it. That's all. But no big deal. Just you know, I'd like you to have experienced that difference. And I think probably the biggest thing would have been to just move it away from that door a little bit, and then you might have seen a little more. Sorry, I'm just still trying to find some position here that is not so painful. But yeah, that probably would have done it, is to just create a little distance there. But other than that, like I said, it's there. It's just very, very subtle. All right, Jaden. So we've got our hard light source here, I'm guessing, and whoops, wrong button, and soft light source here. Yeah, I can definitely see it. Again, the color balance is different because what did you use for your hard light source?
That was flash.
Okay, so
on my
yeah,
camera.
flash has a tendency to be very blue as far as white balance is concerned. I'm just looking. Yeah, the white balance setting says it was manual.
I think I had on the flash setting for that.
Yeah, so which is why the other one would look a little bit warmer. So again, you could have taken these in as raw files. You could have taken them in and adjusted so the white balance was a little closer together. But as far as the lighting goes, it's definitely there. So your flash, because it looks like the flash shot is lit a little bit more from above, but maybe you're just really so close to these flowers that, you know, the distance between your lens and your flash is probably like this. And that's why it looks like they're being lit a little bit more from above, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that was it.
It was mounted on camera, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I like, just on a technical note, let me look real quickly. I want to see your metadata here again. F8, F11. Yeah, it's funny. Even at those apertures, F8 and F11, that background is really, really soft and out of focus, which is good. It's really good for this image. You want that. It doesn't look like there's a ton of distance. So I'm guessing the camera was really close to the flowers, right?
For the harsh one, it was, and for the other one, I was really far back, but I had a different lens on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when you're in, and that's why that background is a little softer than that one. You know, when you're in closer to your subject, remember we talked a little bit about that 3-point thing, the camera, the subject, and the background. And if the camera and the subject are pretty close, even if the background is the same distance, then just moving the camera back a little bit will make that background look a little sharper, and moving it closer to your subject will make it a little more out of focus. And it's a good look for this. Overall, actually, I think the soft light is a more pleasing look for the subject you've got here. But as far as the assignment goes, dead on. This one was done correctly. exactly what I wanted to see. Again, white balance is a minor thing. You know, again, just as you go forward, if you have the capability of correcting that, I'm just looking to see. Yeah, it's a Canon, so it should be able to shoot a raw file. I think all Canons pretty much do. All right, and then and the other thing is, let me look at the first one. Yeah, your depth of field is going to be very limited because you're in pretty close. Just be careful where the point of focus is. Like on this one, it almost looks like it's that leaf at the bottom between the two stems that is the sharpest thing in the image instead of the upper part of the flowers. You want to be sure you understand where the camera is focusing, because by default, the way they're set up from the factory, you really don't know. It'll have multiple focusing points. And if you just let the camera pick the focusing point, you're going to have images that are not going to be as sharp as they could be. I always recommend, for me, I set the camera so that my center point is always what the camera focuses on. And even if I have to focus on that and then move the camera to recompose without changing focus, at least I know what I want to be in focus and what I want to be sharp will be. It's a lot easier to show you that in person than it is in a Zoom meeting. But at one of these meetings, hopefully I'll be able to give you an idea for how to do that. It's not a hard thing to do. It's just that it's in a different spot on every camera. That's all. So anyway, good job. So the first three of these really, for the most part, you guys really got the assignment. You figured it out. And Caleb was the same way here. So we've got obviously the softer light source, the harder light source, and I do see that we have some ambient light in the room. I don't know what it is, what light is creating that sort of a blue highlight on the door and across the center of the guitars. Is it like a fluorescent or are they LEDs?
I have LEDs hanging up.
LEDs. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was trying to close the curtains, but they don't work. So I was about to rip them off the wall.
So, but the telltale here is the shadow under the guitar. That's where you can see it. When you look at that and you see that dark shadow under the guitar, even though it's not completely sharply defined, it's way more defined than that is. So this is clearly the softer light source. Even the shoes look better, like they have a more overall illumination to them than they do here. Same thing kind of happened to you here though with the exposure. This one's a little more underexposed than the other one is. Let me just look here. Yeah, I don't have. Is it a phone? Yeah, it looks like a phone picture, so you wouldn't have had a whole lot of control. What was your harder light source? What did you use?
I just pulled down my blinds as much as I could for like.
Oh, so just the light that was the artificial light took over as opposed to the ambient light coming in.
Yeah, for I used the blue on my LEDs and I used like the brightest white I could get for the two different pictures.
So I ask this of anybody, what could he have done to make that a little easier as far as getting rid of the as much ambient light as possible? Anybody want to throw a suggestion out?
I mean, if it's from your window, you can put a like a blanket over it or something.
That's one way. There's actually an easier way. Wait till it's dark. Then you don't have any ambient light coming in at all. It's just, whatever you've got in the room. Of course, that would have changed this image. And the only way to really to do it the way you did would have been to shoot this one before it got dark and to shoot that one after it got dark. That would have been about the only way, to do that. But I know that that's probably, unless you plan that and you shoot like right as it's starting to get dark, it's kind of unrealistic to expect you to set this up and come back 2 hours later and do that. But that's the easiest way to get rid of ambient light. Are those the windows I'm seeing reflected in the guitar there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to get rid of it, but it would have required, a little bit of a time lag between shooting the two. But otherwise, you know, as far as the assignment is concerned, I definitely see a hard light source and a soft light source, so no problem there. Your LEDs obviously are creating some, because you have a highly reflective subject, you know, you're going to have that issue. So before I say it, does anybody have an idea for how he might have been able to get rid of that without editing it? How to get rid of the LED reflection in the guitar? Anybody, including you, Caleb? Any ideas?
Probably change the angle.
Yeah, that's it exactly. So there's a rule in lighting called the angle of incidence, and it states that the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. And that's a really fancy way of saying that if you have a light source here and it goes to your subject here, it's going to bounce right back at your subject. If your light source is here and your subject is here, that light's not going to bounce back up. It's going to actually go down away in an angle that's equal to the angle that it comes in at. So probably leaning that guitar forward would have been about all it would have taken to get rid of that. Years ago, they used to have the Festival of Lights at Ogilvy. You know, they had the big, well, they still have it, I think, the nativity display that is in the fountain area next to the glass shop. And it had these glass panels in front of it, you know, to protect the display. And I was up there once, this is a long time ago, and I used to see the busloads of little old women come through the park, you know, and they'd be, and this is a great example of the angle of incidence, because they'd be on the bus and they'd have their cameras out, you know, looking out the window, and they were taking flash pictures of what was out the window, not realizing that that flash was just going to hit that window, come right back into the lens and completely ruin their shot. Now, this was in film days, so they wouldn't have even known that until they got the film developed, right? And, but that's because of the angle of incidence. So I saw this woman standing in front of the display. She's off the bus, she's over in front of the display, and she's taking flash pictures of it. And I thought, I'll be a nice guy, I'm going to help her out, right? So I said, ma'am, if I can offer you a suggestion, I said, instead of standing directly in front, if you move a little bit off to the side, your flash won't bounce right back at you. And she said, well, I thought that's why they angled the glass. And I looked, and they had, from the previous year, the glass wasn't straight up and down anymore. It actually angled back so that you could stand right in front of it with a flash camera and not have that happen, because the light would go out, hit that, and then go, it would mimic, you know, mirror the angle of the glass rather than the angle that the light came in. So needless to say, I felt like an idiot. I'm glad I didn't tell her I was a photographer. I'm like, no problem, carry on, have a great evening. But I just hadn't noticed that by looking at it. Yeah, it probably would have helped all of the reflections, the windows. I think that's probably you I see in the bottom of the guitar. Yeah, and that's all just because of that angle. Tilted forward, you would get rid of most of that. All right, Brooke is up next. All right, and let me look through these first of all. So I'm seeing, and you help me out here, because I'm seeing kind of a hard shadow off of all of these images. This one maybe is a little softer than the others, but I'm still seeing that sharply defined shadow coming off the can in all three images. So tell me what changed as far as lighting between these three shots.
Yeah, I did really struggle with this one. One was like a little bit farther away from one of the lampposts on the quad, and one was with a phone flashlight, and then I think the bottom one is it's like from a spotlight on Curtis or Boyd, one of the two.
And there's actually obviously two lights hitting it, because we've got two distinct shadows coming off of it, where the other ones only have the one shadow. So none of them really are giving like an overly, this one probably more so than the others because it has multiple light sources, but we're not really getting the soft light on any of them. They're all a little bit on the hard side. So first of all, I do like what you did. I mean, I think it's, kind of a cool idea to stick this can down in that evil, horrible white stuff that we can't seem to ever get rid of. But it was a cool idea to do, and it does make the can look refreshing, like it's going to be ice cold. And this one, obviously the face of the can isn't as lit, but we do have, I'm seeing differences. I'm just not seeing a distinct hard and soft light source. Like I said, this one's probably the closest, just simply because we've got multiple light sources, and that's kind of wrapping around the face of that can just a little bit more. So what could you have done? It's just, I'm not sure. I would have to have seen, the area that you were in, but I think probably the best bet would have been to use the spotlights in the quad as your light source for your hard light, and then find something that you could have, something white and translucent that would let up a little bit, even a piece of material, even if it's only, this big, but hold it in close to the or close to the subject, just out of camera range. And that would have softened that light source up a lot. And we would have seen, the shadows kind of disperse out a little bit. That probably would have been the best thing. I said it doesn't have to be that big, because the can is kind of small. And as long as you take that and move it close to the can, but keep it just out of camera range, it effectively changes the size of your light source. If you remember last week, we were looking at that big translucent round reflector. Same idea, basically. Just take, could have been a t-shirt, could have been, almost anything that would have done that. But I think that's probably what I would have suggested in that scenario. But I think the can in the ice looks cool, or in the snow looks cool. And I like the fact that you've isolated it, as opposed to, looks like this one, at least, well, a couple of them looks like you did a little cropping on. So I'm guessing there was something up there that you didn't want us to see, and thought it was a distraction and took it out. And that's always good when that happens.
Mhm.
All right, let me get, poor Hannah. She keeps getting bumped out. Like this is like the 4th or 5th time already. There you go. Hannah, sorry, you looks like you keep getting bumped out on us. I hope you're there. Well, I hope you stay there anyway this time. All right, so, whoa, where is my, oh, okay, so I hadn't moved these. I'm gonna move these into, put them all together so that it's a little easier to see. Okay, so hard light source, obviously, on the left, soft light source on the right. I like the title, by the way. Not sure how many people will get that reference. At least I'm assuming that I'm getting the reference. It's an old German film called Das Boot.
It's literally it's a 5-hour long movie for some reason.
Yeah. I can't think of the guy's name who stars in it. He was a fairly well-known actor at the time, but yeah, it was an interesting movie, and I don't know why that title is just such a catchy thing that if you hear it once, it'll always stick with you, right? You'll never forget it.
I mean, I haven't even seen the movie, but I think it's just fun to say Das Boot. So,
well, clearly you got it. I do see, I mean, it's not, I still see distinct shadows like coming off of the laces onto the boot in both images, but there obviously is a difference in the direction or the height of the light source in the left to the right, because I'm seeing the, the ankle part of it reflected here where I'm not over here. Let me look at your other one. Yeah, now this one's really not that apparent. Like I do see the reflection in the bag, but of course the angle has changed from the way you shot this, so that would have changed that reflection anyway. Lighting wise,
I don't think I did this one right. But
I was going to say, lighting wise, it's really hard to pick this up. The biggest reason is because it's on a black background, and so when we're looking for shadows, you're just not going to see it on a black background. but this one looks a little bit better. But yeah, I can see that is definitely a little bit of a sharper shadow off of that shoestring than that is, but that one's still pretty sharp. What was your light source here?
I just use this desk lamp that I have, and I just like backed it up.
Yeah,
I
when you
like put
take it
closer and then backed it up.
Yeah, so yeah, that's good. That's a good we talked about you can use the same light source and just by changing its distance to the subject is going to change its relative size to the subject. So even though the effect is subtle, it is still there. So when you have it light closer to the boot, the shadows are a little softer. When you pull it a little further away, excuse me, they're a little harder. All right, so we got that. Nothing else to really complain about there, which is what it seems I do a lot is complain about stuff. I think it's interesting the way you focus this. I like the fact that, you're really close to the boot, so it makes it look even larger than it probably is. But your point of focus is on the laces, which is appropriate. I think if you had focused on the front part of the boot, the majority of your image would have been out of focus and that wouldn't have worked. This allows us to see a lot of the texture in there. And, oh, I have not been doing my job here. Let me get a folder in here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you were doing that, but I thought you were just skipping over it this week to save your
No,
back pain.
and in this case, it's not so much about creativity as it is just, the assignment itself, because it was a little more of a technical assignment. But I think I would probably go with your boot over your Cheez-Its for you. And then I'm going to back up. Brooke, I would definitely, I don't know. Probably going to go with the one that has the multiple shadows because the face of the can is lit a little bit better. Caleb, I actually like your soft light source, even though, it's a fairly straightforward shot, but I just think the boots recorded so well there. And it was an interesting why. So why did you use boots with your guitar? Like there's got to be some thought process there that I'm not seeing.
I saw that there was a lot of white underneath the guitar when I was first taking the picture, and my boots were like 2 feet away from them. So I was like,
Oh.
oh, there you go.
Well, that's valid. Yeah, to fill that space rather, you could have cropped it, but why crop it when you can add something to it? It's just it almost looks like the guitar has feet.
Right. He could have finished and made it the whole person.
Yeah.
Throw on the hat, bring out some arms.
Yeah, I did that. I've done that before. I was, oh Lord, it's probably been 20 years ago now. I was at the beach and we had this yellow raincoat that we took everywhere with us, and we dressed up a tripod with this yellow raincoat. We called it Bernie because like the movie Weekend at Bernie's was still pretty popular. And we took that tripod with the raincoat everywhere. Like that whole week, we took it to like junkyards and, down to the beach and put binoculars in its, it looked like it was holding binoculars and all this kind of stuff. And the looks we got were pretty hilarious. But like I said, always act like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And, and nobody really, they'll be like, oh, something creative. Cool. I don't get it. Whatever. But you always want to look like you know what you're doing. So yeah, I'd like to have seen a little hat on this. I don't know. Maybe that would have been it. Jaden, I like your, I don't know. I do think I like things about both of them. Which one do you like better?
I think the closer up one.
The flash shot. Okay. And Hannah, I'm going to go probably, they're really close, but I'm just going to go with the one that is a little more forward, shows less of that corner wall and just more of the door as the background here. And Carly, I don't know why, but I always gravitate towards figures. And again, just I don't have a preference here. What do you like?
I kind of like the one with the flashlight better.
On the, okay, this one.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, now we can move on. So Meech is up next. Let me, this one kind of confused me a little bit because I'm seeing a difference in, obviously, well, that one maybe. Let me go back. Okay, well, I'm still seeing a little hard light source on the flowers there, the way I am here. This is, it looks like there's a little bit of hard light coming from the camera. I also see some light coming from behind because of the shadow on the base of that vase. So I'm guessing that would be a little more of a hard light source than either of the other two, correct?
Yeah. I initially, like, when I was working, that's the first one on the table that you were just talking about. That's in my kitchen. So like I wanted to use that, as like the hard light source, but then like setting up like another, like a soft light source, something like focusing on was kind of hard to do for my kitchen based on like how like my outlets are and like how everything else was set up. So then I don't know, like I just ended up just like switching backgrounds and just, I don't know, I was really playing around with it. I took a bunch of pictures of like in different spots because I don't know, I was still trying to like work it and figure it out. So yeah, it was a lot of experimenting going on with this one.
So it's, again, it's subtle, but I think what's going on, so this one clearly, is very flat lit from the camera, a little more of a hard light source with the flash, I'm guessing, that was on that. This one, because we have multiple light sources in there, the bottles which are lit in, there's a little more room light and so a little more ambient light, even though you probably still had the flash on your camera, phone, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Even though flash was still on there, there's enough other ambient light that it did soften it down a bit. So even though your light source didn't change, you changed enough other parameters, I guess, to give us that look between a hard light and a soft light. And you don't have the ability with a phone to move that flash. So I think that's probably about the best you could have done with it.
Yeah, I just like, I don't know, I was definitely just trying to like work with what I had going on around in my house. And also I was just like, I don't want to do the same thing I did last week and take my pictures of like Sunday, Monday night. And I was just like, all right, like, I'm at least like try to get this going early. So I just wanted to work with what I had. And that's what I did.
I think if I could just make one suggestion, I think what might have made it a little more apparent if you had manually turned the flash off on the camera, say for this shot, and when you have an image composed on the phone, and if you touch the area that you want it to expose for, and it would have probably lightened, because without the flash, the flowers would have gone darker, obviously. But if you had touched the flowers, it would have probably raised the exposure and given you a little more of that softer ambient. Now, it would have blown the bottles out. The bottles would have been overexposed a little bit. But I think that would have given us a little more of an obvious look. Although I don't think that, I think that's pretty obvious. It's a pretty hard light source on the left. And even though the light source hasn't changed, there's enough other ambient coming in. It would have been something to experiment with and try that might have worked. But I think overall, I think it works. I can definitely tell which is which. And again, with your, shooting with a phone, you're kind of working with your hands tied behind your back. You don't have the same, level of control that everybody else does who is working with that. But
it was definitely, I was trying to, like I said, I took multiple pictures at like different angles. I know like my roommates and his friend, they were doing homework behind me. They were looking at me crazy, like, what are you even doing all this for? And I was like, they was like, this is for art class. I was like, yeah, it's for photography. Like, I'm not just doing this randomly. Like, yeah.
Well, I'm guessing you didn't probably go out and buy the flowers just for this. You probably, guessing just,
I got them for my girlfriend for Valentine's.
Yeah, Valentine's. I figured as much. All right, let's move on. Ross is up next. So, let me look first of all. So clearly we do have, what I'm seeing mostly is a change in the direction of the light. And obviously exposure. This one's, pretty underexposed, but I'm guessing this is your harder source and this is your softer source. but we just, the exposure is under a little bit. Let me open this up real quick and see if I can bring that up, and maybe it'll give us a better look at it. Yeah, I know you're not seeing what I'm doing here. I'm just going to try it and see. All right, and then let me do a save as. I'll put that back in the folder. Okay. So the image that you submitted is the one on the right. The one I just adjusted is the one on the left. And so I can definitely see in that one that the shadows are a bit softer under the baseball than they are in this one. So and also some other telltale signs, shadows in the webbing and the glove and stuff like that. So tell me what you used here as far as your light. Was it an on-camera flash or what we use?
Yeah, I used a camera flash and also the light in my room. To get it that dark, that's my fault. I was messing with the ISO and I thought it looked pretty cool. So I had it that way.
And I wouldn't argue with that as a creative decision, but for the exercise and wanting to see the difference in the shadows, that's where I had a little bit of an issue. And without lightening it up like that, I couldn't really tell, but now I do. And definitely that telltale shadow under the baseball tells you what you're looking at in the one on the right here. All right, so let me think if there's anything else. Again, your point of focus is good. Being on the baseball and not, hitting some part of the glove that we don't want to be in focus. I think, I don't know. I think I would have really liked that soft one even brighter than I made it, though. I just think that it has I don't know, maybe not. But from what you submitted, because that one is pretty dark, I think I would definitely go with a harder one just because it's a lot more recognizable. And I did not put one in from the last one, so let me do that. I'm going to throw that one in. That was the one we were looking at. Yeah, I mean, I like the choice of subject matter for one thing, and I like that you've simplified it by going in tight, eliminating distractions. So many people that take this class would have taken an image like this. If I had said, photograph this baseball in this glove, they would have sent me the image of the baseball, the whole glove, and their homework and God knows what else all around it, without isolating in on the subject itself. So I like the way you did that. I like the color harmony of that glove, the dark textures with the yellow lines, all of which sort of lead into the baseball. And we're going to start talking about composition later today, hopefully. And so that's one of the things that we'll talk about, is using lines to draw the viewer's eye into your subject. All right, Samantha. Yeah, okay, so I struggled with this one too, because other than exposure, in fact, this is a CR2, okay. Let me lighten this up. And I'm gonna, all right, so I did. I need to wait, there we go. It was open, I needed to close it. Don't save, all right. So now I've made an adjustment on the raw file. Other than exposure, I'm not seeing a ton of difference. All right, I do see it, it's subtle. Again, I can see this one being a little harder. It looks like even with the, wow, boy, it is really subtle. Because I'm looking at the shadows under the bear's head, and
Yeah,
they're very.
That's what I was focusing on, because I was using a desk lamp and I was doing the distant thing, but I was also playing around with my camera. I don't, that's why.
I think
it's a little off. But
yeah.
I was focusing on the chin because the llama is pretty white, so
Yeah.
it doesn't have much shadows.
I mean, I can see it in the llama's, the snout, the face. I can see the difference between here and
Yeah.
here, that this is a little harder source. But other than that, the shadows are so very similar that I'm having trouble, if you hadn't named them, I would have maybe had a little more trouble figuring out which one was the hard light source and which one was the soft light source. Yeah, there, I can see it. It's there, but I think, and whoever else it was, somebody, Max, I think used the desk lamp, just by changing the distance as well. So that it works, but you have to be aware that it's still going to be very subtle, because it doesn't increase or increase or decrease the size of the light source that dramatically. The better thing probably would have been to leave the light source where it was. And like I suggested earlier with someone, just hold something between the light source and the
Yeah.
subject to spread that light out and let it soften a little bit more. So, I mean, you had the thought process down. I think,
I just didn't know how to do it, and I was focusing on what you said about the distance thing. So
yeah, it just, it has to be really extreme for that to work. Like, for example, and it's hard with a desk lamp because it doesn't really change, you can't really change its intensity. But for that to really be noticeable, like the hard light version, that desk lamp would have to be clear on the other side of the room with all the lights turned off. And then you're going to have very distinct shadows, and then move it as close as you can, and they'll soften up enough to be noticeable. I'm going to guess that your distance probably changed by a few feet, and that's about it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and it's just not enough of a change for that size to increase and decrease dramatically based on the relationship with the subject or the size of the subject. But I like your animals. I like your llama particularly. I'm a llama fan. Actually, I think it was the other class that I told that about a presentation I did that involved llamas, and it was before llamas really took off, like before anybody had been seeing them. Now, my God, if you go to like Hobby Lobby or something, like every other row has got a llama in it, like either a picture on the wall or some phrase or saying or whatever. Cards, you go to buy, a Valentine's card, and half of them are llamas. I don't know what happened. I think it was me. I'm going to take credit for it. But anyway, you had the right idea. Just again, just probably not. And I don't think you could have moved that if you taken that light source far enough away to make a difference. It probably would have been so dim that you might not have gotten a decent exposure out of it.
Yeah.
But I do like your. I like the softer one, not only for the lighting is a little better, but also the fact that we see the bottom of the bear's feet and everything. I think that's kind of cute. And Ross, I'm going to go back. I don't know if I put your baseball in there. Yes, I did. Okay. Oops, bless you. All right. So let's do Sammy next. All right, let's look at both of these. So that's, so I'm guessing again, hard light source being some type, either a flash or some type of light from near the camera. And then this one's just being the room light, correct?
This was actually, the room light was off, and then I have like 2 windows from behind, and the sunlight was streaming in.
So again, I think I would have let the exposure come up a little bit on this to get a little more detail in the face of the bottles. But with that being said, I can definitely see the softness as opposed to the hardness of the light source, particularly on this rainbow, I guess is what that is, or
Yeah.
some type of a rainbow with clouds at either end. Yeah, I can see it there. But also then, the face of the bottles being lit up as well. So yeah, I think and I don't know how much we could have gotten it. I'm going to open it up and try here. Yeah, looking at the histogram probably might get a little muddy on us. But let's take a look at that. All right, so now we've got a third image in there. Well, if we can get back to it, there we go. So the one on the right, and there, this is actually the same photo. The one on the right, I just lightened up so that we could see the face of that bottle a little bit better. And now let's compare the before and after. Yeah, I think this one, I think that's what I would have done, is lightened that one up exposure wise, because as I look at like this bottle in the front, particularly where the threads are and all of that, there's a huge difference in the quality of lighting from one image to the other. I can see it clearly there, where I'm just kind of missing it a little bit in the other one. But yeah, that's all it would have taken. But other than that, you know, I like, again, the thought process is good. I like to hear that. I like to hear what it was what you were going for. I just think that it was just an exposure thing. That's all. Just bring that one up a little bit. Good shot though. Acrylic craft. Were you actually going to paint the rainbow? Was that the idea? Uh-oh, did we lose her? I heard a sound. I don't know if we lost Sammy or not. Let me look here. Yeah, I think we lost her. I think she got bumped off. So I'm talking to no one. Well, hopefully she'll log back in here. I'm going to take that image, move it up into the folder. And we're going to move on to Savannah while we're waiting. All right, so we've got Ace again. So so this one, it looks to me, we've got some sunlight hitting the face a little bit. And then this one is just a little more like a window light, you know, an overall window light. And I think what's happening again, so two things. Number one, this one is a little underexposed. But more than that, I think the sunlight here is really more of an accent. It's not the main light. It's hitting the cat a little bit, particularly on his chin, on his whiskers a little bit. But it's not the dominant light source, which is why I'm probably struggling. This one's clearly a soft light, no doubt about that. And again, when you're photographing animals, particularly cats, the eyes are so important. I like your composition here. I know how hard it is to get a cat to do this. If the cat thinks you want something, it's not going to do it.
Yeah, she was being very calm that day, and so I just took advantage of it.
Yeah, you don't get that very often. I don't know what my dog's into right now, but it's probably not good. Was it this class or the other class last week when I went out and checked, he had destroyed an entire roll of toilet paper. Like a brand new roll was just completely in shreds all over the bathroom. So now I've got to keep all the bedroom and bathroom doors shut while I'm in here, so he can't do anything. But yeah, I do like this a lot. Your background's a little distracting, but it's enough out of focus that I still concentrate on the cat. So even though there is a little distraction there, and I think maybe just changing the angle might have helped, but you've got a really good angle on the cat and really good light in his eyes. So I'm not going to complain too much about the background. And I know what you were going for here. I understand, you understood the difference between window and then hard sunlight coming in. We just have a little underexposure, and it's not the dominant light source. But other than that, I think you had the idea. All right, 2 to go. Sierra. So initially I didn't see this image. So this one, so a couple of things have changed, and we'll look at all 3 of them here. So this is a softly lit shot. Looks like it's on the bricks outside, and I'm guessing those are not diamonds. That's probably rock salt. Let's see here. I really like this shot. This one, we just have the pendant really up against the wall or up against, something that's, allowing us to see the harder shadow on it. I don't know how different the lighting is between the two because of that difference, you know, of the distance between the locket or the pendant and the background. I do like this a lot, though. I think creatively, I don't know. I might have just cropped it in a little tighter, maybe gone to a square, because there's a lot left and right that we don't really need to have, particularly on the right, because it's all very much the same. But I like how the background sets the subject off on this. It is relatively softly lit. I don't know what that is on the left, but it's pretty cool looking, the blue. It's not a window, right? It's more like a picture or a poster or something.
No, I had my roommate hold my blanket in front of the mirror.
Oh, so that's a mirror.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I like the color that it gave you on that. I think that was interesting. And this one, again, for a soft light shot, is pretty good. I think I like the fact that we've got some diagonals coming in with these bricks. I might have maybe moved the chain on the turtle to come in from a different angle to give me, you know, kind of a triangle. But again, that's just a creative thing for the photo, not a discussion about the lighting. This one clearly is a lot more of a hard light shot. But this, I like both of these, but this one's really interesting. I think this one's it's a very eye-catching shot. It's really tough, I know, to get something that small. I'm assuming this is a very small thing. It's tough to
Yeah.
get. Yeah, it's tough to get something that small in sharp focus. It is a little bit on the soft side. It still looks pretty good, but boy, if that had been tack sharp, that would have been pretty amazing. I'm just thinking about if I would have liked it, you know, completely in front of that shot, that half on the left, but I don't think so. I think I kind of like it split down the middle like that. Yeah, it's an interesting shot. And then again, like I said, nice and soft on that one. And I think this one is just, you know, just to show us the hard light. I think, and this is a raw file that you sent me. I'm betting that we can probably get some really good detail out of this. Let me pull up the exposure and the shadows especially. Yeah, I mean, a couple of sliders is really all it took to, I'm going to leave the highlights. Let's take the whites. Yeah, there we go. A couple of sliders is really all it took to completely transform that shot. Look at the before and after there. And that's the power of a raw file right there. That's what it does for you.
Yeah. On my computer, it will show the first image for like a few seconds. And then if you let it load long enough, then it'll transition to like the closer to the second one.
So what's happening, I'm trying, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but it sounds like you have, what software are you using?
The light, or it's just the photo thing for Windows.
Oh, okay. So then my explanation may not be correct. It might be, but I don't know how that operates well enough to say for sure. But on my computer, for example, in Adobe Bridge, that will happen. I'm going to hit done to get out of this. That'll happen when I first load a window full of thumbnails. And the reason is, actually, I should open this back up and show you. The reason is that when I set my computer up, I went into this software, which is Adobe Camera Raw, which is part of Photoshop. And I took an image in that was very representative of what I shoot most of the time. So it had skin tone in it. It was shot in the studio, had skin tone. It had a range of color, some highlight and shadow and things like that. And I adjusted it, not exposure, but the highlight, shadows, color temperature, vibrance, clarity, all of those things. I adjusted it to where I thought I wanted all of my files to look like that. Anything that I shot in the studio under those same conditions, I wanted it to look like that. And then, and I know they've moved this So I'm hoping I can find it. There is somewhere here. Here we go. There's this little drop down. It's this little ellipse here that once you've made those adjustments, you can select this option that says set raw defaults, and it'll bring up a dialog. And I could tell it, you know, if I had, for example, if I had multiple cameras, I could set up a default for each camera and it would automatically recognize which camera an image was shot with. And even by serial number, if I had two cameras that were identical models, they would have different serial numbers. The software will even recognize the different serial numbers because sometimes even the same camera model will have a different response in one way or another. But anyway, I set this up and hit OK. And then that becomes my default for anything that I shoot from that camera. And then when I load my thumbnails into Bridge, they initially come in as very flat, just the way the camera recorded them. And if I watch it, it'll start automatically updating the thumbnails and applying that default setting. So I'm guessing that something similar to that's happening to you in Windows. It's not actually changing the file, it's changing the display of it. Where in this case, it would actually change the, well, not the file, but the rendition of it. So it's probably the same kind of an idea. It's trying to make it as pretty for you as it can. But this is my favorite one of yours. I really like that one. Pretty well done. I like this one too, but I think that one's your winner. All right, Zach is last here. So I'm guessing that this is your light source.
Yeah, that was my light source after, like, for the soft lighting. Like it's one of those lamps that has like 5 different ones coming out. So I just put 3 together and put a pillowcase over it.
Yeah, I can see the outline of the lamps inside. So that's kind of what tipped me off there. So let's look at the images that you shot with it. 1, 2, and 3. So again, I'm not seeing a ton of difference in shadow, or this one a little bit, although they're kind of backwards. It looks to me like this would be the hard light source and this would be softer, but they're marked differently. And the reason I say that is the lightness of the background. Typically in a the harder light source environment, the background is going to be darker because of the qualities of that light. So I don't know, but I'm seeing a very similar light pattern in all of these, except for this one. This one does look a little, and it's marked as the soft light source, but to me, it looks a little more of a hard light source. I'm not sure what I'm missing here.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it could have been like I was taking the pictures like kind of late, but the sun was still out. So
yeah, there made it
was open.
Yeah, there could have been too much influence from the ambient light to really. So when you shot, you did the soft ones, obviously on the harder ones, did you just take the pillowcase off? Is that how you did that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's probably, again, a number of people had that issue where the ambient light was probably still a little bit too bright to accurately see, a big difference between the two.
Oh, okay.
So this one's a little bit like the main area that should be in focus is a little bit out, but these two are in. They're a little different. This one draws a little more attention to what is that thing, by the way? What is hanging there?
Oh, it's just a little jar with some rocks in it. Just like a little decoration.
I was trying to figure it out. I thought you would say whatever it was, and I'd be like, oh, okay, now I see it. But I wouldn't have gotten it because it's just something very unique anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So
it just hangs on there.
I kind of like what it's hanging on. It almost reminds me a little bit of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, like that thing's going to come out and eat somebody.
Yeah, it twirls around a little bit.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. All right, guys. So before we take a break, let's go take a look at our images for the week. I'm going to try to get everybody where I can see you all here. Okay. And same thing as always, a simple raise your hand or your virtual hand, either one, and we'll go through them. You can only vote once, but you can vote for your own if you really like it. And before we do that, let me look through. Okay, yeah, I wanted to see what I liked. All right, so let's see. We'll start with the baseball and the glove. Okay, Rocky Hard 2. All right, the Gray Goose. Gotcha. The guitar with feet. Okay, the figurines. Frozen. A Whole Llama Love. All right, the flowers. Tennis shoe. Turtle. Monster. Paints. And Ace, the cats. Wow, that was really spread out, but I think our shoe was the winner there. Das Boot, which I think the title alone probably should have gotten at that. I'm also going to throw at the turtle. I like the turtle. I think visually that's a really really cool shot. There was a little thought put in that. The color harmony is really good. So we're going to give it to both of those. Both get a point this week. All right, guys, it's 5:13. We're going to break till 5:30. I'm going to go self-medicate a little more. And hopefully when I come back at 5:30, I'll be able to get through the rest of the class. We're going to do, there was something I said at the beginning of class. I said, if I forgot to remind me, does anybody remember what it was? Oh, well, we were going to look at the process for exporting raw files out of the software. So we'll do that. Then we're going to look at some, the first compositional elements, which will be your assignment for next week, to shoot things that match up with those compositional elements. And that'll be it. So let's go till, like I said, it's 5:14 now. Let's go to 5:30 and then we'll finish up. We'll see you guys. Let me stop sharing this. See you in a few minutes.
Hello. Yeah, I'm something.
Hannah, your mic isn't muted.
How are you?
We're gonna probably just extend here by a couple of minutes. My dog decided at 5:29:30 that he had to go outside, so I'm gonna have to go let him in a minute. I have a little doorbell for him, but I don't know if he'll use it, so what's the world coming to? We have doorbells for our dogs. I don't have one for people, but I have one for my dog. And he just rang it to go out, so sure he'll be ringing it again to come in. So yeah, we wanted to look at the process for exporting a file. Let me find, somebody here had a raw file. Yeah, so we have a couple of them. All right, so maybe I can do this quickly before he freezes out the death outside. So I wanted to just show you, at least in this software, the Adobe software, the Hannah keeps getting bumped off. I feel so bad for her. The process for exporting a file out of Bridge or something like that. Adobe Bridge. All right, so this is the file that we'll use. This is a raw file. We've already made a few adjustments to it. Whoops, let me get back up to fit in view. And there are a number of ways now, this is still a raw file, but there are a number of ways to take this from that point to a JPEG. One is to click open, and it would open into Photoshop. There used to be an export. I don't know if they've moved that or if it's still not here. That would have been the simplest way. Let's see if it's over here. Nope. Well, it's not the process that I use, which is why I'm struggling to find. Convert and save. There we go. It's up here. Okay, so this little down arrow looks like a download button, brings up this dialog box, and you basically would tell where you want to save the file, what format you want to save it in, JPEG, TIFF, PSD, whatever. JPEG would be what you would be suggesting, and a couple of other options basically at the bottom. And then hit save, and it basically then exports and creates a JPEG. I use a different method. I would just hit done, and then, oh, was I even sharing that screen, guys? Did you see that? You did? Okay, so it just went away on me. Let me share this one instead. What I would do is actually, and we're not going to get too far into this, but I would just select all of my images in Bridge. And then there's an option under the Tools menu. It's Tools, Photoshop, Image Processor, and it does the same thing. It'll come up and you can export these files out to any one of 3 different file formats, TIFF, PSD, and JPEG, and you can have different parameters set for each file format. Just show you what it looks like. There's only 4 little areas. And honestly, other than changing the output and the file format, there's really not, once you set this up, you don't ever really change it. So I won't get into how I do that or why at this point. I just wanted you to see that there were multiple options for doing that as far as exporting. So let me go let the dog back in and we'll finish up.
So, how is everybody today?
Could be worse, could be better.
Me too, me too.
I just slammed a monster and I'm trying not to like jump around. It's hard to sit still.
I've never had Monster. I like Red Bull though. I think I said that weird. Red Bull.
Red Bull cranberry, that's the best one.
Never had that one. I like actual cranberry juice though. That stuff is so good.
Yeah.
All right. So my guess is that he's going to start barking in a minute. I'm going to have to put him out, but we'll see how this goes. Hi, sweetie. Or he's going to start biting my cords. This dog bites everything. Yep. Sorry. Here we go. Come on. Come here. Out you go. Come on, buddy. I'll be out in a little bit. Oh, I should have known better. Anyway, so there are multiple options for exporting those files out. Lightroom does a very similar thing. There's actually an export dialog, and you just tell it, okay, this is what I want. This is where I want it to go, and all kinds of stuff like that. All right. So now we're ready to do the nuts and bolts of this week's class, and we're going to start in composition. Hang on one second while I get that file ready to share. There are probably a dozen different compositional elements, 10 or 12. We're only going to look at 5 of them this week. We'll kind of split this up. We'll do half of them this week, half of them next week. And then there are a few different ones that we may look at the third week. Let's see. Let's get this open. Don't know if this is the correct one. All right, let's try. Well, rather than find a different file, I will just get this one set to work with it. All right. I think there was one other thing in here I wanted to look at, but let me. All right, starting with that. Sorry, I had all of this set up and it opened the wrong file, so I just have to adjust this one. All right, we got it. Let me share that. All right, so you should, well, as soon as this starts sharing, you should see the compositional elements and a list of them, correct? Okay, cool. So these are the ones that are kind of considered the most basic ones. Rule of thirds, which you've probably heard of before. Balance, contrast, leading lines, convergence, which convergence and leading lines can be confusing. They can be very similar. Use of diagonals, framing, perspective, simplicity, symmetry, and viewpoint. And perspective and viewpoint are also very similar. So we're only going to look at the top 5 this week. The first question that I always ask when we start talking about composition is it better to have things centered? So typically when people start taking photographs, especially if they do a picture of a person, did I just freeze up? Nobody's moving. Uh-oh. I don't know if anybody can hear me. There we go. Did I freeze up or were you still able to hear me?
We can hear you, but
yeah.
But it was frozen. Okay. So typically when I start seeing pictures from people who are just starting to take pictures, you've got this square frame, and if they take a picture of a person, let's say it's a head and shoulders picture, typically they put the head right in the center of the frame and the shoulders below that, and you've got all this space above them and all this space on either side. And that's a telltale sign that they really aren't in tune with composition. Looks like I am just maybe having a bit of a connection problem here. Anyway, and that head is usually really low in the frame, like right in the middle, because that's where the focusing spot is, and they just kind of naturally put things there. What you want to do is get to a point where you see the entire frame. You see all four corners. You start to see things that are not only your subject, but in the background, things that could be distractions, whether they are objects or lighting patterns or whatever. And where to place things in the frame based on what it is you're shooting. So let's move to the first one here, which is rule of thirds, which is really nothing more, if you haven't been exposed to this, than dividing your frame into thirds, both horizontally and vertically. And it creates these four what are called impact points where the lines intersect. And if you place the subject, now typically it's not all subjects that'll work for this, but if you place your subject on or near one of those impact points, it's generally going to have more impact. I mean, it's just the easiest way to put it. In this case, you can see that this little structure on the right is actually hitting two of those impact points. Of the four, the lower right-hand impact point is generally considered the most impactful, but it doesn't always work to have your subject there. That's just, if you're going to pick one of the four, that sometimes is the best one. A lot of that reason is because we read left to right, and we want to come into the photograph. Our brain wants to come in from the left-hand side and work across the photo to find our subject. If this were on the right-hand side, if this structure was on the right-hand side, our eye would still come in from the left, and it would kind of hit that structure and stop. And it wouldn't really let us get to the rest of the photo to kind of enjoy it. So we create this little, path, if you will, to get over to the subject. And it's not always the case, but more often than not, you'll see images on the right side, the right third of an image rather than the left third. Even a portrait shot, if you look at this one, this guy's face and particularly his dominant eye is very close to that impact point. There's not really much to his right or camera left that's that important, but it just allows the image a little room to breathe, and it gives us a place to come in to get to him. This would be just as effective as a vertical shot cropped in tight to him. And which is what this one is. And again, look at that dominant eye. The dominant eye is the one that is closest to the camera. I'm not talking about her dominant eye. I'm just talking about the photograph's dominant eye. It's the one that's closest to the camera. So in this case, it's put right on that impact point. Couple of things done well here. Obviously the shallow depth of field, but the eyes are in focus. The cute smile and all that plays a part in it. But compositionally, this works really well. It's cropped in tight in order to keep that eye right where we want it. So this is an example of an image that uses the left side impact point, and you could make a case. I thought I had it in here at one point where we actually reversed this image and put the boat on the other side, because it does create a little bit better of a lead into it. But there are times where this works out really well too, especially the fact that it's a silhouette and we're dealing with a sunset. So we don't have a lot of detail in our subject, and that kind of forces us to look around the rest of the image. Move on here. Again, rule of thirds here. This is just kind of an interesting shot to start with. The ones that I'm showing you here, a lot of these are not mine. They're just ones that I found as I was looking for compositional elements. And this is a self-portrait, I'm guessing. This guy is outside, his camera's on a tripod, and he's photographing himself in the reflection of this window. Again, using the lower left impact point, but because he wants us to see all of that expansive landscape that's on the right. This one could actually fulfill a couple of different compositional elements. It is somewhat the rule of thirds. It's also simplicity. There's really not a lot going on in this photograph, so your eye automatically goes to that silhouette. If the area of sand behind him was not sunlit, this would not be anywhere near as effective. If there was shadow on that sand, for example, the way it is behind him, wouldn't be nearly as effective. And if the person who took this moved to their right a bit, that's what would happen. His shadow would then be in front of that darker spot of sand. So they probably made a conscious decision to move to the left so that that shadow now is silhouetted really well against that landscape. The next element is balance, and it typically uses 2 or more elements in an image to balance as far as weight and location. In this case, we've got a lower left image balanced by one in the upper right. There wouldn't be much sense to have either one of them by themselves, but together they kind of work a little bit. This is another example. This is probably a better example of balance. The subject is in the foreground, but and it's in the lower, it's in that impact point, it's the lower right. But in the upper left impact point, we've got this other structure back there that kind of plays off of each other. And the fact that it creates a diagonal between the two, I don't think we're going to get into diagonals this week, but that's another compositional element. Anytime you have triangles and diagonals, they're very powerful. So it creates this imaginary diagonal between the background element and the subject and balances the two. Even though the background element is a much larger structure, it's so far back that the two have equal weight. Contrast is another one. In this case, color contrast, where we're using colors that do contrast with each other. Reds and greens are in contrast to make something stand out a little bit more. And again, it's very simplified. It's oversimplified so that our eye has to see what it is that the viewer or the maker wants us to see. Probably another one of the biggest ones is leading lines. And again, notice how this one comes in from the bottom left, which is again where our eye wants to come in from. We want to start reading left to right, and we follow that road, that twisting, winding road around to where we find there are automobiles and things on that road. And that's, you know, they're so small in the image. If this road didn't lead us there, we might not ever find them. But that line and everything else being very simplistic in the image, it forces us to find those cars and the people on the highway. So here's another example of leading lines. The problem with this one is, again, we want to read left to right. So if you take this image and you flip it, suddenly it subconsciously just works better. Our eye comes in from the lower left and we go straight out that wood into the water to that boat in the impact point that's in the upper right for the rule of thirds. So let me go back again. This one has leading lines, but it's just a little backwards for most of our brains. This one flows a whole lot better. You're going to see the same example here. Really cool kind of an image of this fence leading down to this shadowy subject. But again, it's for me, it's on the wrong side. Now we're reading left to right. Can't help but get to where that guy is out there. Another leading line, this is actually light trails off of a train. Probably, I'm going to guess, this could have been a very long exposure. I don't know how fast the train was moving, but I'm going to guess this was probably 30 seconds or so to allow that to move through, unless the train's moving really fast. You can see the headlights from the train on the track, the tail lights, but it creates this, it's not only a line, the tracks and the lights create these mirrored lines that follow each other, but that curve at the end there is really important too, because it kind of bends us back into the image. Spirals again can be really good for leading lines. This is looking up a staircase and our eye just naturally follows that all the way up until we want to see what's up there. And this is an example of looking down at the same kind of thing, that spiral leading us down and the couple at that upper left-hand impact point. Again, leading lines just fall. Now this would have been a lot better if it had been a subject out here in the center. you know, somebody in clothing that would have been a good color contrast, something that would have really stood out, white, yellow, red, something like that. Then all of these, the plank and the fencing and the shadows and everything would have led our eye right to that. But even still, it's a good example of leading lines. Now, convergence is similar to that, but it's just a little bit different. The key to understanding the difference between leading lines and convergence is convergence typically leads to a singular point, okay? And it's generally going to be near the center of the image. So that's kind of the difference between the two. You can see there are leading lines here, but they all take us right to that one tiny little point in the middle of the image. Here's another example of it. Yes, they are leading lines, but because they lead to this one point, it's probably a little more like convergence. So let's look at where a lot of this comes from. Again, I mentioned triangles. We'll talk a little bit more about those next week, but if you look at what we do, a lot of what we do comes from old masters paintings, Renaissance painters, things like that. This is not an accident that the Mona Lisa is posed this way. It's not an accident that her hands are showing and she's wearing dark clothing, because the lightest parts of the image for the most part is her skin, and it creates this triangular shaped pattern. Even the way her hands are posed kind of balances her face against her hands. The hands are set off against the darker clothing on the bottom. If she had lighter clothing on, wouldn't be as effective. And so the image on the right, we're again using triangles, using body parts to create these triangles and placing the faces on one axis of that triangle. So again, triangles, it's a common and powerful compositional tool. If you look at family posing, you're going to see a lot of that. So the rule for posing families, there's one die-hard rule that you should always try to follow. And it's not just families, but any group, unless it's like a reunion or something. I mean, there's only so much you can do. You're going to have rows of people in that case. But if you're trying to do a creative posing situation with a group of people, the rule is don't allow two adjacent heads to be on the same plane or on the same level. In other words, dad is higher than mom is, the daughter is lower than dad is, the little boy is lower than all of them. It creates these two triangles and a diamond shape, but there are no two heads that are adjacent to each other and that are at the same height level. When
you took that last picture, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know them. That's the Kutrovac family. Right?
Yeah, yeah, I did their wedding years and years and years ago, and I haven't seen any of them in a good while. If you run across them, tell them I said hi.
Okay.
But yeah, this was a while back. George and Lynn, they had a funny thing happen at their, well, maybe I shouldn't say, at their wedding. We always used to get some great, when we did wedding video as well as pictures, we always used to get some great either footage or some audio on the mic that the groom wore. And I remember there was something she wanted to tell him. They were sitting on the altar, and there was something she wanted to tell him about her sister who was sitting on the other side of the altar. And she looked down and she saw the microphone and she said, "Can you turn that thing off?" And he's like, "No, I don't know how." And she goes, "I'll tell you later then." I mean, it's just funny. Or you'd hear, we'd wire the groom up 10 minutes before the ceremony and start recording, and then you'd hear him in the bathroom or something like that. Just always had some funny stuff. Or they would be talking about us just, to get a rise out of us. So same thing here. Now you would look at this and you might say, wait a minute, you've got adjacent heads that are on the same level, but they're not. They're broken up. So for example, dad and the boy in the middle, they are not adjacent because mom and the other son are in between those heads. Same thing here. This guy is in between these two. Dad is in between these two. So even though we have people that are almost shoulder to shoulder on the same height, there's somebody in between that's breaking that up. And you see you're creating 1, 2, 3, really 4 main triangles in this setup. And again, same thing. You see this in paintings all the time. The two paintings on the left really, really use, if you look at the overlays on them, it has things at those rule of third impact points. The one on the right is has that, is this house is on that impact point. Plus it has a little bit of balance going for it with the red rocks. This is in Sedona, Arizona. The rocks are balanced with that house. House is pretty cool, you think? The guest house down here is bigger than my house is. And that's an observatory on the roof. The thing has a built-in observatory. It's huge. It's this sprawling complex. And they told me that the guy who owned it is the guy who invented the MRI. And I thought, you know, that's funny. The guy who invents this tiny little cramped thing that you get in to be scanned lives in this huge, expansive house. But yeah, that's a pretty cool spot. All right, so let me get out of this. A couple other things I want to show you in Bridge about composition. First of all, there are three of these little information cards. One talks about off-centered subjects, one talks about leading lines, and the other one talks about rule of thirds. These are not the best tools that I've seen, but they do give you a pretty good overview, and I've uploaded these into the resources folder in Sakai, so you can take a look at those anytime you want. Let's do the family things first. Now, you don't always have the luxury of setting things up. This is a studio shot, so I did have the luxury, and you can see the triangles. There's one, the diamond shape for all of them, another triangle between mom, daughter, and this dog, another triangle between mom and the two dogs, a triangle between mom, the son, and the dog. So you automatically create these triangles by keeping those heads on different levels. And visually, it just works. Sometimes you get into a situation like this where you have to shoot quickly. I think
my sister's in there.
Is she really? Which one?
She's in the top right. She kind of looks like me.
Oh yeah, okay. So I never know who. This was done for a magazine article, so I never, like, I'm in and out of these things so fast that I don't get them to really meet any of these people. This was a few years ago too. I think it was at the YWCA downtown. But notice what I did is I used two chairs to seat people, used the arms to raise a couple of people up. And then again, so I've got a triangle here on the left, I've got a triangle on the right, I got a triangle here, I've got a triangle here, and intentionally have spaced these girls where I did to try not to have adjacent people with the heads at the same height. Now, this girl in the middle and the one to the right are very close. And when you're working really quickly like this, you don't always have the ability to do what you'd like to do. Normally, I would have reversed these two, this girl in the back right back left, and the girl next to her. And I think I probably did, because for that back row, I tend to want to do an angle, like a roof shape, and put the tallest person in the center and then come down. But I think what happened, I think I may have done that. And when I had her over here, these elements on the back, this mantelpiece, were a little distracting, like the candelabra was probably sticking right out of the top of her head or something. And I didn't like that. So we since she's a little taller, we moved her over a little bit. Let's see, we haven't talked about framing, so we're gonna skip that. This is another example of leading lines. Not just the painted lines, but the guardrail and the shadows all create these lines which lead us right to the bridge. Another example of leading lines, and this is, you could also say this is symmetry. This has a very symmetrical look, but these rows of flowers in the back create these two diagonal lines that lead right to the subject. And then you've got these horizontal pieces up at the top that contrast against the vertical pieces at the bottom. This is a really cool place to shoot up at Ogilvy because of all of that. A couple of these we're going to skip because we haven't talked about these elements yet. But this is, again, an example of using that spiral down. This is in a house that I did real estate shots for. Really cool place. But you know, to shoot something like this without getting your feet in it is really kind of tough. I was leaning out over the top of this thing with an ultra wide angle lens. It's kind of funky. So this is rule of thirds a little bit, but it's also color contrast, like the fact that she's dressed in a bright color and the background is very monochromatic. That's done intentionally to set her off as much as possible. And then this was the cover of one of the magazines. And even though it's shot from an unusual perspective, and that would be perspective and viewpoint would be two of the compositional elements that you might think of, it has that, but it also has something else. Can anybody see what it is intentionally done here to create another compositional element?
Is it the color? Like the color tones?
The color, yeah, the colors were intentionally placed the way they were, but you're on the right track. It is those placemats, but they serve another purpose.
Do they all like lead you to the middle?
That's exactly what it is. So you've got this square composition with a round center. Okay, so when you play geometric shapes against each other, you're going to win. And then you've got the placemats that are coming in at all these angles to lead your eyes right into the center. So yeah, good job picking that up. This is not only rule of thirds a little bit, but also leading lines using the wood, the horizontal pieces of wood in these benches to lead into him. But then every once in a while, you kind of break those rules. This is one that it's not finished. I'm still working on this. This is a very centered composition. It's not using the rule of thirds at all. This is, it's a square crop with the subject directly in the center. I did experiment with a horizontal crop and putting her on that rule of thirds on the right-hand side, letting that wire and everything kind of lead you into her. But what I noticed was that you lost the sense of height when you did that. I like all of this open space below her feet to show that, you think that she's actually sitting up that high. A lot of things were done on this image that that make it very different from what it looked like originally. I don't know if I even have access. Maybe I do. Yeah, so this building that's on the right, that's actually the building. And this is a reversed image. This is downtown, right as you get off of the Fort Henry Bridge coming into town. This building is directly across the street from you. But again, this image has been reversed, and I've taken out all of the stuff that was on the right-hand side. What else did we have in here? These were the crows. So the crows are shot under the same lighting as the subject. If you look, she's got a bit of a blue on one side and golden on the other. The crows are shot the same way so that they match lighting wise. And the reason for that is that I knew I was going to light these windows up and give a reason for that warm light. The blue is coming from the sky, the blue in the sky. This was the original of that. That's the original umbrella. And then that's just the wire coming across, and all of them composited into that. But compositionally, it's not what I had in mind. I thought I would really go for something different here. But sometimes when you put things together, they flow better in a different way than what your original concept was. And the concept, this is actually her concept for the whole shot. She wanted to do this. The newspaper, I've changed the title of the newspaper to Squawk Talk because of the crows. And the headline now says privacy issues ruffle feathers. And the idea was that she was tired of people on social media basically sticking their nose into other people's business. And so you've got these crows that are sort of, as she's reading about it, they're basically sticking their nose into her business and trying to see what it is that she's doing. But of course, if there was somebody sitting on a telephone wire in the middle of the street, I'd probably want to know what they were doing too. All right. So as far as composition goes, again, we're not going to look at a couple of the other ones just right now. We'll save those for next week. But let me go back to the 5. So the ones we're going to be concerned with this week are rule of thirds, balance, contrast, leading lines, and convergence, those 5. And your assignment for next week is going to be to shoot an image that illustrates each one of those 5 compositional elements. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, there is crossover sometimes, especially between leading lines and convergence. But just remember that we're usually looking at converging to a single point for convergence, whereas leading lines can kind of snake through an image sometimes. Same rules as always, 1 o'clock deadline if you can to get them in by then. Put them in a folder with your name on it, zip that, upload that. If you want to take a closer look at the PDF files that are in the resources folder, it might give you a little more of a heads up about some of those elements. And you can Google any one of these as well. There's all sorts of information out there about all of these compositional elements. There are more than these, but I think these are the ones that you'll see most often. And honestly, rule of thirds and leading lines are probably the 2 most common compositional elements of all of the ones that are out there. Let me stop this. I don't know if I've put that file with those elements in the resources folder. I'll look. If it's not there, I'll go ahead and put it in. But then also when I post the assignment, I'll have them reinforced in there as well. So it starts to get a little more fun from here, because we are still concerned with the technical stuff. I don't want you to forget about what we've talked about as far as exposure and lighting and all of that. I want you to kind of keep going forward with all of that. But concentrate mainly on the composition. Like right now, if I look at Jaden's picture, he's got this perfect composition. We're leading in from his closet, and he's got this, little checkerboard pattern on the wall behind him, and our eye just sort of swoops into that. Not really so with anybody else. Max, you're the one who, I was going to say, you're the one that has that head right in the middle and there's nothing up above. Do you know why that happens mostly? Most cameras, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't know. I just want to say that I have like a freestanding camera. So like, it just kind of sits like that. So.
Well, what happens most of the time, if you look through the viewfinder, you're going to have information in that viewfinder. You're going to see your exposure information and stuff like that. And for some reason, if any of that goes across the top, people are reluctant to put a head anywhere near that, like they think it's going to print out on the image or something. You have to learn to see past that as well, not just the distractions that are in the frame, but look past any of the information that is in your camera's viewfinder, because it's not really going to show up there. When you can get past that and just sort of use it as information and not a compositional element, things will start to take off for you a little bit. So that's pretty much it for this week, guys. Do we have any questions about, what we're doing for next week? So there's going to be 5 images. Well, at least 5. You can always do more if you want, but I'm not going to tax you any more than that. One for each of the 5. Here's what I would do. I would, for the next couple of days, just keep your eyes open. Just as you're walking around or whatever you're doing, keep those things in your mind and see how many you can recognize in different forms, and then go out and just, you can do it pretty quickly sometimes, grab a shot of each one. And if you would, name each of the files with the compositional elements. So you would have one that's titled rule of thirds, one titled leading lines, that type of thing. Just helps me to understand what it is that you were going for. All right, everybody cool with that? All right, guys, I think I'm going to go put my head between a vise, and if I can make something else hurt worse, maybe I won't feel the back quite as much. Again, if you have any questions. Oh, and who was it that whoever it was that emailed me your files this week, that's fine. If you missed the deadline, Just, you know, even if you've missed an assignment in the past, you can still get it in at any time and get credit for it. You just don't have a shot at getting a point back, and you don't get the critique and all of that. So if you do miss that for any reason, email them to me. That's fine. No problem. All right, guys, I'll give you 20 minutes of your life back. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you in